On today's episode of the DeRaud-Messinger Show, we're previewing and predicting Florida versus number 5 Texas. Longhorn fans, don't forget to like and subscribe, as always, for more content. And check us out at HornSports.com for all the latest in Texas news. Now, Dylan, this Florida team has lost already 4 games. However, they've also won 4, but to not so great SEC opponents. But on the flip side, this Gators team has faced some of the toughest teams in the country beginning in the year against Miami, who, of course, is very highly rated, Dylan. But we'll see if these ratings continue on for the Hurricanes. That's some little rivalry going on between Longhorns fans and Hurricanes fans on Twitter. But just to give the basic game info, as always, the game is Saturday, the 9th at 11 a.m. Central Time at Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium in Austin, Texas. The details have not changed there. Televised on ABC, Texas, as of recently. Favored by 21 points. Of course, the line always moves, Dylan. Getting into this Gators defense, anything to look out for here?
Well, nothing will really jump out to anybody statistically, Devon. They're 74th in scoring defense at 24.9 per game. They're 88th in rush defense, 69th in pass defense, right? So again, nothing that they're doing incredibly well or better than really anybody in the SEC. I will say though that a key factor for Florida and why they've been able to stick around in some of these games, particular in beating Kentucky. I don't know what words are, but they went to overtime against Tennessee, and they were in it against Georgia last week until Georgia finally got their run game together and able to put the game away. But a big part of that, Devin, has been their 10 turnovers in the past 5 games. 3 of those came against Carson Beck and his 3 interceptions, but also they had 2 turnovers against Tennessee. So Florida's been very good at forcing mistakes and then capitalizing off of them, even while opposing offenses have been able to move the ball on them. And a lot can be contributed to defensive coordinator Austin Armstrong. Devin, he in 2021 was the DC for Southern Mississippi. They actually called that defense the nasty bunch in the Sun Belt. Little fun fact to throw out there, but I'm mostly saying this just to attribute how much of their game plan will be to be generating pressure against Ewers and forcing turnovers off of hurried plays, which is actually a good game plan going in against Ewers, just from what we've seen. If you're able to get him hurried, rush him a little bit, he has a higher tendency to throw the ball to the team, right? So that is one area of this Florida defense to watch out for. In terms of impact players, they got Tyreek Sapp, 3.5 sacks on the defensive line this year with 5 tackles for losses. He's a big dude off the edge that Texas will definitely need to be accounted for. And then you got free safety, Trequezi Bridges at 42 tackles. He's got 1 pass deflection, an interception, and 2 forced fumbles in the backfield, Devin. But also, he goes into your one rule. He's the safety leading the team in
Can't
total tackles.
can't happen. Can't happen.
Yeah. So that's, again, with the statistics and everything jumping off of the box score, Florida has been able to get the ball moved on them, and it's been on their secondary to slow teams down or at least force turnovers heading towards the red zone. But a big part of that, Devin, too, can be contributed to their secondary in terms of injuries. They had Jason Marshall, their 4-year starter, who's going to be leading their cornerback room. He's out with the labrum injury for the rest of the year. And then Devin Moore, who leads the team in 2 interceptions, got injured against Georgia. So we'll see if he's able to go for Florida. But that's 2 starting corners for them in the secondary that they're going to be losing. And then lastly, impact player, Jack Pyburn, 39 tackles at linebacker, 2.5 tackles for losses. He's another guy to watch out for in that second level.
Dylan, how many impact players do you have? I feel like you got on me about that. In the past week, you got a whole
I shortened
roster.
it down. This is a true 3 impact players right here. Usually it's the whole roster that I go with.
Suspicious. Dylan, not to waste anybody's time, I'll quickly go over the Florida offense here. Just because, Dylan, right now, the offense, you can't really go too extensive on them, just given injuries this season. I mean, I feel like that's the Florida roster as a whole. That's been really the common theme in 2024. But to begin, just some fun stats. The Gators have the 57th ranked scoring offense with 29.5 points per game. So it's not too shabby, Dylan, but it's pretty much just straight down the middle of the road there. 56 in passing offense with 244.8. I'm going to give you specifics, point 0.8 yards per game. And then lastly, 83rd in rushing offense, which we're talking about middle of the road. That is dropping down, Dylan. That's off the median there. 83rd in rushing with 145.4 yards per game in that category. So yet again, middling offense. The problem for the Gators yet again, injuries, and unfortunately the injury bug has struck at the quarterback position, which is not a ideal position to have injuries, of course. Graham Mertz, the typical starting quarterback for them, out for the year now for a couple weeks, I believe. DJ Lagway, the freshman, Dylan, who's been a star player for the Gators when having the chance to play, he suffered a hamstring injury last week against Georgia. So, Dylan, we love our walk-ons. Turn the page to Aiden Warner, a Yale transfer, who's a walk-on quarterback, will likely be starting this contest unless Lagway has some, just miracle recovery doing, because he got, I believe, carted off, right, against Georgia. But Billy Napier, the coach, said that pretty much in layman's terms, it's not as bad as it looked, which is good to hear. Lagway is a product of the great state of Texas. But Dylan, weapons-wise, a lot of injuries. He's going to be looking for, in terms of Aiden Warner, Elijah Badger. There you go, number one. 24 catches on the year, 560 yards. So not too bad there. Adds 2 touchdowns. But then you got 6-foot senior Chimere Dike. That's right, Dylan. I got the pronunciation right. A Wisconsin transfer. Dylan, you love your Badger boys. 23 catches, 428 yards, another 2 touchdowns. An injury to Eugene Wilson is going to keep him out for the season, Dylan. That's some new news for the Gators, so that's an injury that, of course, does not help. Then redshirt freshman Aiden Mizell is the last of the targets. He had a decent game against Georgia. Let's see if he can continue that for the Gators. Of course, if you're a Texas fan, not what you're wanting to see. Running backs, same thing. I'm going to repeat. We had an injury to the wide receivers, 2 injuries to the quarterbacks. Montrell Johnson Jr. has been injured as of late. He's usually the starter for the Gators. But Dylan, injuries have their way of plaguing this team, and so I'm not, putting any money on him playing in Austin. However, it seems like he's about ready to suit up. So it might be, in fact, the case that he does suit up. But yet again, I'm not betting in favor of health when it comes to Florida just right now. I mean, we're giving you a health breakdown here. So if he is not able to go, expect a heavy dose of freshman Jaden Baugh and then redshirt junior Jacoby Jackson. Both have combined for about 550 yards and 9 touchdowns. So that's a lot of injury bug talk. I don't want to talk about injuries anymore. Dylan, let's get us to the X factors in this game.
Yeah, Devon. I mean, there's been something in the swamp recently, it feels like, with all these injuries. But in
Malaria.
terms of X factors, malaria could be one. Giant boa constrictors could be another. There's a lot going on down in Florida. But most importantly, Devon, for Florida and in any Napier defense, it's going to be consistency. Because like we talked about, there's nothing sexy about this team, but it's making the plays that are needed in the right moments is what defines this kind of team that is Florida at the moment. And a big thing I wanted to highlight is open field tackling for Florida. Like I said, teams have been able to move the ball on them. And that's purely a lot of that comes down to the talent of other teams against Florida and then injuries too to that secondary. But defensively, they've been all over the place depending on who the matchup is, right? They didn't look great against A&M, but then they're holding in strong against Tennessee, making some plays against Georgia, and then the cap finally comes off. But open field tackling is going to be huge in this one because it's going to be up to Bridges, guys like Bridges, Pyburn in the second and third level to take on these Texas playmakers like Bond, right? Like Golden, like Silas Bolt, right? Wingo. All these guys are able to make plays with the ball in their hands. And Texas is a heavy screen team as well. They want to just dink and dunk. They want to get Ewers to throw the ball out of his hand within 2 seconds and then let their guys, again, make plays in the open field. And that's what's going to separate this game from being, Texas winning 21 by 21 points or Florida actually hanging around in this one. Because if they can limit the additional yards after contact that Texas can generate, which is again their bread and butter. Florida's going to be able to stick in this game. So pay attention to that in this one, because if Florida is able to tackle the receivers on the first attempt, it's going to be a different game than past Florida games.
Dylan, my X factor is the Texas run defense because, as mentioned, Aiden Warner at quarterback, the third stringer, the walk on. I mean, he might have, a miracle game, Dylan, but it's a quick, just getting up to speed if you're Warner being thrown into the spotlight here against Texas. Of course, he did play last week against Georgia as well, but it's trial by error. And, Dylan, there might be a lot of error in Austin, so expect a heavy dose of the Gators running game. If Texas can't slow that down, that'll be great for Napier's squad. It'll help Warner just really gain confidence in terms of being able to rely on the running game, and he won't need to be able to make as many throws if that's the case. But Dylan, yet again, the Texas run defense has been a strength of this Texas team, so that will be an interesting matchup, and that is my X factor. Dylan, now we're looking at danger level. What's your danger level here?
A little higher than I was expecting. This Florida team's it's weird, Devin. I've got the danger level as a 5, and hear me out for the reasoning. Florida's just been a gritty team as of late. I mean, on paper, Texas has the advantage at each position group. There's really no doubt about it in terms of talent and how they stack up. But again, Florida's been hanging in there, and they really have not stopped playing until the clock hits zero. In terms of just I feel like we saw it against Vandy, Texas. There was a moment there where they kind of let off the gas pedal a little bit, and Vandy clawed back in there. And there were some moments there where I have a feeling Texas fans were nibbling on their fingernails a little bit. So expect a similar instance too if that shows again against Florida, because again they're not a sexy team, but they can do the little things and focus on what they can do right, and that's just be consistent in the passing and run game, and then making the tackles when needed, creating pressure up front. All of a sudden, Texas could find themselves either down 3 in the fourth or up 3 with Georgia with the ball, and or not Georgia, Florida with the ball, and having a chance to put this game away. So something to watch out for, because it has the makings of a, I don't know if this is a real thing yet, but a semi trap game, Devin, a semi trap game in a way. Coming off a bye
It,
for Texas, they're well
it
rested,
could be a trap game.
but they're looking to get this season over with.
Well, Dylan, like you said, Florida has played everyone tough, even though they are 4-4, and with Warner at quarterback, most likely that definitely has the makings of a trap game where you fall asleep because the third string walk on quarterback is in the game. But Dylan, maybe he,
And they'll put you to sleep too.
well, maybe he has a sneaky good performance in Florida. But Dylan, my not X factor, sorry, danger level, similar score to you. I got a 4. I think if Lagway was in this game, I would give them that 5 that you gave them. Just that little added confidence. Warner, yet again, is going to have a sneaky, solid game here for Florida, but they have enough difference makers at key positions, even with injuries, to make things interesting here. I just don't see it or forecast it in Austin. However, Texas, Dylan, does not like to, run away with games, especially as of late. So that's another reason to add a little notch on the danger level, but I'm going with the 4 here. Now, Dylan, prediction. Give us your little rapid fire prediction for this Florida Texas game.
Yeah, I have Texas winning this 34-17. Like I said, coming off a bye, Texas I feel like got much needed rest. I know Ewers has been playing, but he's definitely been a bit banged up ever since that injury he suffered earlier in the year, right? And they're getting playmakers back in Bond, Barron, Makuba, at least getting healthier going into this matchup against Florida. And I just expect with what Texas is able to do, getting their guys the ball in open space, it's just a lot to take on for a Florida team that is going to be down their quarterback, possibly, depending on what seems like a miracle or something changing in the upcoming few days, where Lagway is going to be able to play in this matchup. I think Texas finds himself in a similar situation where they're not playing a team, the rock star quarterback at the moment, and they're able to lean on their run game, take over early in the game, and then at that point, just kind of, I don't want to say coast, but able to again ride the coattails of their running game and put the clock away.
Well, Dylan, I mean, it's not beating around the bush to say that Texas has gotten lucky, honestly, this year in terms of who they've played at quarterback, whether it be backup quarterbacks that have gotten a chance because of injuries or just teams that are having a quarterback transition and haven't found their, franchise guy, air quotes. And this is another scenario, most likely, if Lagway yet again can't play here. Dylan, in this game, I've got Texas winning 31-13. For Texas, the key to this game is to start out hot and to not allow Florida to just milk the clock out via running game, Dylan. They could, take a page. Was it the Mississippi State game? Started out decent for the Bulldogs, just really holding on to the football and milking the clock in the first quarter. That's yet again Florida's key, but also Dylan, on top of course Ewers and the wide receivers finding a connection, and then also being able to find a steady running back in Wisner or Jadon Blue. One of those guys has to win the job. They've done all right, Dylan, but if Texas wants a chance to go deep this season, one of those guys is really going to have to take, the keys to that Lambeau that Steve Sarkisian has as an offense and literally run away with it. Sark wouldn't mind a metaphorical, not actual, but a metaphorical hit and run where you just take the car and go. Georgia Bulldog references potentially there, Dylan. But
to your point, though, Devin, if we're talking about Lamborghinis, it just feels like Texas is one of those teams. At the moment they hit that freeway and they got open space, they're one of the toughest teams to beat. But if you can put in some turns, some obstacles, right, scoring first, having Texas play from behind, like against Georgia, that it really limits how Sark wants to use his playbook. Texas, the way that it's positioned, obviously any team would rather play from ahead, but Texas, the moment they get that lead, feels like one of the hardest teams to really get that back or get back into a game, from what we've seen. So I think that's a good point. I know we're throwing Lambo references here, but to your point, like
no,
if
for
Texas
sure. I mean, you put
doesn't jump
a
out to an early lead,
couple speed bumps down in the road and you're driving a Lambo, it doesn't matter how nice the car is. You better slow down a little bit if you don't want to get dinged up. And that's been this Texas team, as you said. I mean, you mentioned it earlier as well. The just Texas offense, when dealing with pass rush, has struggled lately. And Ewers still learning, Dylan, how to be the quarterback that he's wanting to be. And of course, with the long-term goal of being a long-term NFL starter as well, stepping up in the pocket, not fading away when the rush comes. It's been tough for the tackles as well, and Ewers yet again to get used to just those little things that add up. But Dylan, it's been the little things that have been killing the Longhorns just overall. I mean, we talked about a couple of different things. One thing I wanted to mention, in addition to all those things, was the punting game for Texas. I mean, you don't want to see the punter out if you're Steve Sarkisian, but if you do, Dylan, lately it's just been hold your breath in terms of the performance there. And then additionally, just field position in general. Texas has not done a great job of that, and of course, punting is a large percent and factor in that, but also when the offense has to be able to move the chains at least once or twice before electing to sputter. But Dylan, overall, yet again, a lot of complaints there. We didn't talk about Texas too much because it's a little more Florida focused here, but the Longhorns are ranked 5th in the country for a reason. They have a lot of promise, especially on really the skill positions on both sides of the ball. The wide receivers are those shiny toys. Quinn Ewers, yet again has the potential to be one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. Defensively, you got the cage dog on defense, Anthony Hill Jr. Andrew Makuba, hopefully, I think Dylan might be coming back this weekend, if I'm not wrong. Isaiah Bond, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you got the toys here. Florida, though, you don't play with your food. You don't play with your meal. If you're taking care of the Gators, you got to take care of them immediately. This is a team that you have to prove to the committee and to the people at large that, Dylan, you can take care of a team like Florida with ease, especially with all those injuries. But yet again, my final score prediction, 31-13. I think Texas handles business. It's a matter of when do they decide to do it. Is it a early, comfortable lead, or do they have to run away late? But more importantly than our predictions, let us know down below what you've got in terms of the score between Texas and Florida. Check us out at HornSports.com. And of course, have a great rest of your day.